afternoon. Welcome back to another episode of the PlantFuelled Femme. Today we have D'layne. Hello and good afternoon. Welcome back to another episode of the PlantFuelled Femme. Today we have D'layne Benson with us. D'layne is an RN, a registered nurse, and a breathwork facilitator practitioner. So welcome, D'layne. I'm super excited to have you on the show this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I know today we're supposed to dive into the fascinating and honestly super interesting subject of overfunctioning and how that pertains to our wellness in general. But I'm just kind of curious, how did you get into the practitioner space where you're helping women with this?
Well, I came by it in the honest way that many of us do by trying to figure out what was going on with me. And yeah, my story really started in 2020, and I was working as a registered nurse in the hospital when the pandemic hit. And so it was the chaos of dealing with that. My stepson, his school closed, so we had to homeschool him all of a sudden. My husband had traumatic brain injuries, and so I was his caregiver. And so that was like another layer to that. And then, in something you just couldn't even make up, my father got diagnosed with two different types of cancer. And um, that was also in that time where it was really hard to get to see any doctor and get any type of care. And we suddenly have two cancer diagnoses, not even just one. And as a nurse, I'm kind of trying to facilitate, advocate for him. And yet I live on the other side of the country from him. And so I'm trying to call these doctors. And, it's just all of that all at once, when I had so often in my life been like the rock for everyone. It came to a point where I could no longer do that. And I still didn't stop. And I just pushed and pushed and pushed until I hit such a deep level of burnout that my body functioning just absolutely fell apart. And so it was basically, it's been a whole rebuild process from that. And fortunately, I was studying nervous system regulation already to help my husband with his traumatic brain injuries. And so I was already a few years into that and had been taking programs along that line. But like the true overfunctioning woman, had I applied any of that knowledge to myself? Of course not. I didn't think I needed it. I was like, oh no, this is so good to know, and I'm helping him so much, and I'm teaching some of my friends, and yet didn't apply any of it to myself. And so that was really my reckoning moment. And then like the final layer of all of it was that, and of course this was not known to me at the time, but I started perimenopause too. And so I had all these other extra layers that I didn't realize. And yeah, and so that's how I came into this, is finally at that breaking point. It was both imperative for me to take care of myself, learn how to do this, to move out of it. But then also, as I'm doing it, I'm just looking at all of my friends and all of my coworkers and thinking, everybody needs this. Like, we're all just teetering on that edge, and it just takes something like that to knock you off of it. And so that's when it became just a driving passion. And then I went and got a certification in coaching through nursing, and then have just been building upon that since then.
That is amazing. And I think, that is so true of overfunctioning women, that we go and we go and we go, and we don't think, like, no matter how much you know and how long you have been practicing this, it is so hard to step back and go, oh my gosh, this applies to me.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it's what I see with my clients time and time again. Like, I
Oh
can't
yeah.
tell you how many are therapists themselves, are teaching somatics, are yoga instructors, and they've been doing somatics for years. All of these people, but yet we just don't do it on ourselves because we can't prioritize any self-care, any time for ourselves. And so it's this disconnect that we're unable to just admit, you know what, I need this too, and I'm not making the priority for myself. And it kind of becomes this whole, um, I don't even know how to describe it, this unalignment with energy when you aren't doing the work yourself and you're teaching it. I think that there's this inherent kind of block that you face of really truly connecting with your clients and going really deep with them, because how can you? You're not doing it yourself. And that really holds you back, and it holds them back as well.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. And I think that all any kind of practice is like that. If you haven't, we can tell you what the textbook says, but if we haven't personally experienced it, yeah, I think
Right.
that really plays a role in the impact that you can have with clients for sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Absolutely. So your story is fascinating. I'm sure it resonates with, we have a lot of nurses that we work with. So I'm sure like just hearing their stories. I mean, you guys work 12-hour shifts, you're giving and going and basically running for 12 hours every single day. And that does in of itself take a huge toll on you, on the energy you have, physically, mentally, emotionally. And then you're still, going out and taking care of your families and a lot of like the nursing, for those of you that don't know, you guys also have to continually educate yourself. So just like any kind of coaching
Right.
application or certification, in order for you to keep your job, you have to always be learning. So you have like some sort of education piled on top of your job, on top of family obligations, and then you had COVID and more family issues. So that is
Right.
a ton that you were attempting to deal with, and your body literally just said stop.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think you highlighted something that's so key with nursing is there are, and there's, I mean, there's plenty of other careers that are like this as well, but
Hmm.
there are so many expectations on you and so much
Yes.
pressure on you constantly, and we normalize it. And
Right.
so we don't even think it's really having any kind of impact on us because everybody
Mhm.
else is doing it.
Right.
And so there's all this guilt and shame that can play in as well because you can't keep up with the pace anymore. And I mean, even at that time, I remember how much shame I was feeling because it was just like, why can't I keep up with this?
Mhm.
Why, why am I getting like so far behind in everything? And why do I feel so bad? And it was all shame instead of any compassion for
Mhm.
myself. It was just, I'm still looking at everyone else going, well, they can do it. Why can't I? Instead of, I mean, going back and talking about it now, I think, oh my gosh, look at everything I was dealing with in one moment. That is insane.
Yeah.
But we don't have that compassion or that vision to say, oh, this is crazy. Like, I shouldn't even be doing all of this. And so it's such an interesting shift when I can help a client see that and say, oh, wow, you know what? I'm a superwoman and this standard that I'm holding to myself is absurd. I need to slow down. I need to, and especially, of course, to highlight again the perimenopause, like all the body changes, all the
Mhm.
things that come with women. We need to pace ourselves during all of that. It's a lot. Just in itself, that one experience is incredible. And there's so much that you go through, and there's so many challenges you can face, and everyone's experience is different. And yeah, just highlighting that we need to honor that. We need to have compassion
Mhm.
for ourselves, and we certainly don't need to have shame or any kind of comparison with other people and their experience with it.
Right. Right. That's so true. And with perimenopause, I mean, that changes too the way that your body processes stress and how it
Right.
handles stress. And I think a lot of women don't understand that, and they try to keep up with, how you've been operating for the last 30 years, and it doesn't really work anymore.
You got it.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird place to be, like, suddenly it's almost like overnight, like, why can't I do this anymore? I have done this every day of my life since I can remember, and why can't I do it now?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you came to the realization that your body was overloaded, what did that look like for you? Like, how did you finally connect those dots to realize that you had taken on a little bit too much?
I think the exhaustion was the biggest thing affecting me at the moment. It had gotten to the point that, and I now know all the physiology behind it, but
Mhm.
basically my body was in such overdrive because my brain was not stopping. The mental load was huge and it was just exhausting me that way. Physically, nothing was getting replenished. I wasn't
Mhm.
eating well. And then
Mhm.
additionally, being in that survival state and that elevated nervous system state was also affecting my digestion, that my gut
Mhm.
motility, all my gut health, everything like that. So I'm again not getting the nutrients I should, getting
Right.
anything to really support my body. And and so not only was I exhausted all the time, but just generally speaking, my capacity for things was so low.
Mhm.
And so yeah, all of that it just kept feeling like I was in a stranger's body.
Mhm.
And I just kept thinking, this really isn't right. Like there's definitely something wrong. And then being a nurse, of course, we get exposed to all the things that can go wrong or what could be. And so I'm going to all these worst case scenarios because that's how my brain was functioning at the time. It was very hyper vigilant and looking for every single thing that could possibly be wrong with me. And then I'm thinking, wow, is there something extra bad that's wrong with me? And yeah, it's like layer upon layer upon layer plays on itself. And then it just makes this big snowball that you can't stop. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Right. No, it so does. And I think a lot of people probably never connect those dots, that a lot of those things are indeed connected. And it's not, it's not necessarily like horrible things. And the root cause is often stress.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So many things come from stress. It's crazy.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
So,
And we don't acknowledge it. We just
no.
keep trying to power through.
Right. Well, I think stress is like normalized. Everybody has
Mhm.
stress, right? So it's okay to be stressed. And I go for a walk or I go to yoga once a week, and that's supposed to fix it all.
Right.
And often it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's many layers, I think, to stress. And speaking of stress, so when you get a client in and you're going through, well, I'm assuming you go through like background information and current information and trying to identify like what is, what can we unravel here to get to the root cause. Like I know that's what we do inside
Right.
of our practice. And you're seeing that, stress is likely at the root of a lot of these problems that people are having. What are some of the first things that you maybe work on or suggest to start managing the stress?
Right. I think a good place to start is the recognition of exactly what's going on with you. And when I think of overfunctioning, I like to help people get to the point where they can see exactly what patterns am I doing to overfunction, because it can show up in different ways. And I think once you can recognize that a little better, then you're able to kind of discern how to deal with it. So for example, the patterns that I see the most often are perfectionism, people pleasing, overachieving, and hyper independence. Like those seem to be the four. And sometimes we talk about other side ones if I notice one coming up with a person when they're talking, but over the top, those feel very relevant and important to pretty much every overfunctioner, and to varying degrees. But with all of those, your essentially your worth is defined by your achievements, by keeping up with the Joneses, by self-sacrifice, giving to others, all of those things. And while you shouldn't have any guilt or shame about wanting to have or wanting to give to others, great, that's awesome. Wanting to just live at a level of excellence and wanting to achieve things, and that's great too. We're not saying any of that's bad, but it's over functioning. So in what ways are you taking these little personality patterns and you're not doing a resilient level functioning in them? You're overdoing it to the point that it's actually working to your detriment. And so that's what I really try to hone in the beginning is which of these speak the loudest to you. And it seems like, and this is just from my working with my clients, the perfectionism, the overachieving, the hyper independence, those people are a little more responsive to, not always, but they often are. But the people pleasing one is so tricky and sneaky because so many women are just tied to their worth being what they give to the family or what they give in service of others. And especially if there's like a religious background there or even current religion, then wow, the giving thing just really can get out of control. And I speak from personal experience. It's definitely not in a judgment thing, but that's basically how I was raised, was just give to the point of complete exhaustion, because as long as you're doing things for others, you're a good person. And so that's what I just bought into that. And that was the hardest identity for me to let go, to be putting in boundaries, to be saying no, to be actually looking out for myself. Oh my gosh. That was so painful and difficult for me, because then that made me a bad person in my belief system that I had at the time. And
Right.
so that kind of ties into the next layer of all of this is like once you identify these, then you have to get into, well, what are the beliefs behind them? What are the reasons that you believe this? And then evaluating, do you still believe this? Is that something that's still true for you? Or is there some flexibility? Is there some gray area? Is there some wiggle room? And then trying to redefine your beliefs, rewrite them so that you can start to move into a new phase of being because you realize that you're essentially, and this is most of us, we're operating on these old programming things that were defined for us by other people, and they have nothing to do with what we actually believe, but we've bought into them, and we're just following and following and following that when without any question. And so that's what I think is so important for this type of woman to do is really start to pause and think, is this what I actually believe? Does this serve me? Because like I said, I don't want any of us to lose our identity with high achievement or with giving to others. But I just want us to do it in a way that's safe and that doesn't work against us.
Right. Right. And in my experience, a lot of the safety that's needed so that we do have the time and the capacity to care for our own needs is in setting boundaries. And
Right.
that seems to be so hard.
Yes.
Like so hard. I think and I guess it goes back to the way that a lot of us were raised.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that is so important when, like, one thing, like one of the techniques that's really good for it is titration of just like what that means essentially is you're trying to just do a little bit of the boundary
Mhm.
work, but you're
Yes.
doing it lightly and you're doing it gently. And so then it's just not this complete overwhelming, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Because I think that's one
Mhm.
thing that happens is so many of the women that I worked with are pushed to the very edge of what they can take. And then
Mhm.
that makes us more reactive because we're not in that regulated nervous system, the more
Right.
resilient state. And so we do a reactive pushback boundary where we're just pissed. And then we say, you know what? Like, here's my boundary. And it's way too intense. It's with our closest loved ones, which those are the hardest to set boundaries with anyway.
Right.
And then it just blows up in our face. And then we think, well, I can't do boundaries. But what it really is just starting to set really tiny ones piece by piece. And then
Mhm.
we work with your nervous system to be able to stay calm of, okay, there's some discomfort when I set this,
Mhm.
but starting to feel that that's okay. I'm still
Mhm.
safe. Nothing has gone wrong. And then but over time, building up the boundaries more and more and more.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, it is better when we can take that slower approach. I agree 1000%. Worked really well for me. Still working on it.
Right. Oh, it's always a
Yeah.
work, right?
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And what you said, about religion playing a big part in that people pleasing, it's just so true because I was raised the same way, and it is
Mhm.
so true. I think that the people pleasing was probably one that went sooner for me, but I think it was like circumstantial. Like I completely left the environment, and so therefore, then I
Right.
didn't feel that anymore. But for myself, there's still like mega responsibility for four small humans, and then I have to educate myself and I have to perform at work, and then I have all these other things. So it's just, I think you have to find that balance where you can, and I think you touched on this, where you can still perform and you can still do the things that are important for you, but you have to find the time and the means to take care of yourself.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's something that I practice. I do encourage inside of our coaching program all the time is like you have to care for yourself. Like you have to take these 5 minutes to do breath work or get the food in, or find your daily movement. It doesn't mean that you have to spend hours taking care of yourself, but doing something daily to manage your own needs. Because if we don't, you burn out, just like you said
Right.
in the beginning, and like I've experienced multiple times, and you burn out, and then you can't do a good job of taking care of those that you care about.
Right. Yeah. And I like what you were saying. I think it's so important to schedule time
Yes.
even on the self-care because
Oh
again,
yeah.
we just without the ability to prioritize ourselves, we won't
Hmm.
make time. Like we just won't.
No,
And we'll say,
no.
I'm going to do it today, but if you don't have it scheduled, you won't. And
Right.
it'll just keep getting passed over and then the next thing you know, you've forgotten. And I've had that happen a lot with even with myself, I'll notice that. And so I had to start building in certain times to journal, to
Hmm.
do the like I too am I'm a big breathwork person and a breathwork
Yes.
facilitator. So yeah, I know how important it is, and yet I still won't do it unless
Mhm.
it's scheduled in. And
Right.
even for me too, I think it's important for my own personal self-care to schedule going to classes, either
Mhm.
virtually or in person. I think that that's so good for me because if I feel like I'm going into a really busy season, I'll know that I am going to, like, my self-care will be the first thing to go if things get really crazy, even with all the work
Mhm.
I'm doing. And
Right.
so therefore it becomes important to schedule the classes because just in my mindset and how my brain works, I won't miss a class. And
Mhm.
so that
True.
that's what I kind of do to balance that is if I know it's going to be harder for me to keep the boundary with myself, then I'm just going to book a bunch of classes for myself and then I have to go and I will attend it and then I stay on track. And then when it starts to slow
Right.
down again, I can trust myself to get back on track of just doing it alone by myself. But I find that can be really helpful as well.
Right. No, I agree. It's like by putting it in the calendar, it then becomes a non-negotiable task, and we're very good at doing all the tasks, so therefore we will
Right.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
you did touch
absolutely.
on breath work, and I do want to take a moment to talk about that because I think people get caught up in self-care, like go get your nails done, go get a massage, and like I
Right.
don't have money for you don't need money for self-care.
Right.
Like you mentioned, breathwork is also one of my favorite tools. It costs zero money. It takes like 60 seconds, and you can be a much better human.
Yeah,
But you're also I don't think I've met a breathwork facilitator. So can you tell us what that is a little bit?
I would love to. Yeah, so with my work, I have essentially two different types of breath work that I do.
Okay.
And one is the more traditional one that everyone seems to talk about and just know more about. And that's the breath work that's really good for regulating your nervous system, for calming yourself, resetting your mood, all of those things.
Right.
And so a lot of those, I mean, of course, it has tremendous health benefits and they're wide spectrum. And so that's one thing that I do. And within my practice, that's a lot of coaching people into looking at how, like, these overfunctioning patterns, what's going on with them, and then helping them recognize them, and then breath work they can do in that moment to kind of just pause and reset and kind of redefine how they're going about their day. But then on the other end, I do transformative journey breath work,
Hmm.
and that one is a lot more of a thing that people aren't as familiar with, at least yet. But I think it is growing in awareness for sure. And it is extremely difficult to describe, but the best way I can describe it that most people have heard something about is how psychedelic therapy is getting to be such a big important thing helping people with depression, anxiety, all of those things. And breath work is actually becoming one as well. And this type of breath work you can have it's a similar to a psychedelic experience. It can pull up any type of emotions. It can give you really strange sensations, like you might notice that your hands feel this tingling. It can feel cramping. You can feel it in your face. There's all of these really strange sensations that come over you, and then it kind of depends on what the intention of the breath work is or what we're going for, but you can have visions of things, you can have insights. One thing kind of across the board that I see with myself and with clients is it can give you a third person perspective of your life, but in a really safe way.
Hmm.
So I've had people who have looked upon traumatic experiences that they've had, but they do it with a third person view and they feel really safe while they're doing it. And it
Mhm.
completely changes how they perceive that event. And it's helped them move away from feeling triggers about certain things and really helped them integrate and resolve that experience within their memories and kind of move on. And I've had a lot of therapists that I've worked with to help, like, they send their client to me to work through something, and
Mhm.
then we do the breath work together, and then they can kind of move on from that experience. And then it gives you like again, that going into that third person, it gives you a view. Like for me personally, I could never see the ways I was self-sabotaging.
Mhm.
And when I did breath work, I was able to finally understand what I was doing. And the most powerful session that I've ever had was one where in the breathwork session, I was thinking about how I am always just so frustrated with everything in my life. And it was kind of like this victim mentality of thinking like,
Oh.
just why is everything so hard all the time for me?
Mm-hmm.
And as I started to do the breath work, I started to see myself trying to control everything. I was trying to control, like I was helicopter parenting my stepson. I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
control my husband and his healing. I was trying to control everyone at work. And I was in a charge nurse position. So I was in
Oh
leadership,
God.
and so, but I'm trying to make all of them have this perfect day and
Mm-hmm.
do everything up to my standards. And I just started to see over and over again, the theme was, you are trying to control everyone in your life, and that is your big problem right now. And then I could see this plaque all over me, and it was keeping me from moving. It was essentially like,
Oh,
I kind of think of like Han Solo when he's
yeah.
frozen in that statue. That's kind of what it was. And it was the control I'm trying to exert on my environment is actually what's keeping me locked up. And so I started to break out of all of that plaque and just feel myself get free. And it was this huge cathartic moment. And then all of the emotions that I'd been stuffing down all
Mm-hmm.
came up and just started to release. And I'm sure, as you know, that we hold so much emotion in our body and we don't give ourselves permission to process it and to
Right.
integrate it. And so I could feel all of it coming up and coming out. And so it was this cathartic experience that felt really powerful and beautiful, and it was a complete catalyst for changing everything, because once I saw it, I couldn't go back. And I knew this was my deep truth in that moment. I needed to really start focusing on all of my control issues. And as I started to work through all of that, then just the healing that's come, because that was a few years ago, and all the healing that's come since, just because I've started to, like, basically by giving all these people their own autonomy to learn the lessons on their own and to do their own thing, I've seen so much more healing with my relationship with my husband, with my stepson, and then just they're thriving because I finally moved the cage that I had over them and had pulled it off. And so it's like these profound levels, and I absolutely don't think I would have gotten there without breath work, to just have that whole awakening experience. And that's what I hear from clients a lot, is that they have it, either it's a cathartic
Mm-hmm.
release of emotions and things they've stuffed down, or they have a moment like that of just really seeing something so deeply and it affects them profoundly, and then they can start to change and to create a different way of being in their life.
Right. No, that is amazing.
Um,
It sounds a little bit like RTM, but with breathwork.
I'm not sure what RTM is.
RTM, I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's a type of therapy using imaging work to work through past experiences.
Okay, yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but
yeah.
it does not have the breath work. It's all like mental imaging.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. My husband did one form of that. It was called something different,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
yeah, and it can be. And the interesting thing, and just the struggle I have with describing it, is
Yeah.
everyone's experience is so profoundly different, and even
Yes.
it's different time to time to time. So every
Right.
time I do breath work, it's just completely different. Like um there was one that I did a few months ago that I was working with my freeze response. And
Mm,
so when we're talking about the nervous system, and this is very common with overfunctioning women, is that on the outside, on the exterior, we look poised, we look like we have it together, we've got it, everything is calm. And
yes, I
inside, our
know.
brains are like a raging hurricane, and there's all of this overthinking, all the gears are going. And so, yeah, it's this really unique thing that um, we give off a perception that, like,
Mhm.
we got it all together, and we absolutely don't.
Right.
And so that was one thing I was trying to work on, is that I felt like that was still my most active of my nervous system survival techniques. And so in breath work, I went and tried to work on the freeze response. And in that one, I was, you lay on your back, and I was moving around and I started dancing, but I was laying down and just moving my arms, moving my legs, and just the energy and the colors I was seeing. It wasn't cathartic. It wasn't crying my eyes out. It was just fun, like this beautiful experience of unfreezing my body. And yeah, that's what is so interesting, is that it's really fun to see what happens with people, because I do private sessions, and then I also do group sessions.
Oh, really?
And I
Okay.
love doing the group because everybody gets to share their experience, and then it helps other people see like what's possible in breath work, and it just keeps compounding the healing of my community, because we're all helping each other see, oh, you can work through that in breath work. Oh, cool. And it really turns down all of those safety systems in your brain, like the amygdala and all those fight or flight responses, everything that comes up. It pulls you into this place of feeling really, really safe while you explore these different things. So it's super interesting.
That is. Do you do these sessions in person? Are they virtual?
I do both.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That is super awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to have to include your link or whatever in our podcast. That way people
Yeah.
can find you, because I've never heard of this, and it just is super fascinating to me.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I think we could probably geek out for that, or on that, for like a half an hour by itself.
For sure. For sure.
But I do see how, working through things like that with someone that's over functioning and overextended could be incredibly beneficial.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So breathwork obviously plays a part. The breathwork facilitation, does that have like a name?
The specific one that I do is I just call it the transformative journey breath work. I got trained in a few different types.
Yeah.
And I just pulled the things that I like, and then kind of invented a
Cool.
few more things to pull in just with my experience. Because I
Okay.
feel like I've gotten a really deep nervous system experience, because I've been through everything with my husband and his brain injuries.
Yeah.
And then having like a nurse perspective, and then going through everything with me and my overfunctioning, which were very different. But I really got to see deeply how the nervous system can affect you. And so I kind of tried to pull that into all of my breath work and what I wanted to do when I worked with people. And so yeah, transformative journey breath work that's really my specialty in that deep breath work. But I do, like I said, the restorative breath work as well, and just helping people essentially feel great in their nervous system again.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I think that's so needed, because like going back to like very first said in the beginning, stress is normalized, and it's not just
Right.
our daily stress. Like we're bringing stress from childhood, and we're bringing stress from before our relationships, and it hangs around in your body and prevents you from living a really incredible, fulfilled life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So breath work. What else are good self-care practices that a highly functioning person would benefit
One thing that I think is really helpful for women, if you've started to feel this, if you're listening to this podcast and you're hearing, you know what, identify as overfunctioning, that sounds true. And then looking at the different roles, like I was talking about, like the perfectionism, the people pleasing, overachieving, hyper independence, I think that it can be super helpful to start to explore your beliefs around that in journaling.
from?
And so sitting down and just, for example, for just taking like the people pleasing, sitting down and writing about where you are hurting yourself with people pleasing. Like, where are you overextending yourself? Where are you resentful? Resentment is a really good place to find boundaries, and writing something about that, and just starting to cultivate a relationship with the people pleasing, so that you start to see where your belief system is currently, where you'd like it to be, and then exploring just the different ways that you might want to start to have some more boundaries within it. And that can be really powerful to start to shift you and just help you see where you need to work. And then from there, it's just setting really small, like we talked about with boundary setting really small, achievable goals, and just working on one little piece of that. Over time, it will start to compound, and then you'll start to get a lot more ability to stay resilient as you say no, as you set boundaries, all of that. I think that's all important. But yeah, any of those particular things, like perfectionism, another one with that one, like journaling about that, but then like little things you could do to be being not perfect of what can I do? Like, for an example, for me, I used to do, when I worked in the hospital, I did the scheduling, and I would over the top spend hours and hours and hours making the perfect schedule for everyone. And I decided to start scaling it back, and I gave myself a time allotment, and it has to be done in that time allotment. And so for me, when I first started doing it, it would bring out uncomfortable feelings and I did not feel good about it. But I just sat with those and I would do my calming breaths and just kind of slow it down and be like, okay, I'm going to just go ahead and release the schedule. It's fine to go. And I'd release it. And the thing that I discovered, and this is so true with perfectionists, is that we have this ultra high standard that we try to hold ourselves to. And when we go down a notch, nobody even notices because we're
No.
still above like the average. And so it
Right.
was mind blowing for me to discover that is like, okay, first of all, I can feel safe and send out the schedule and not overdo it. And then second of all, nobody even cares. Nobody notices. What am I doing? It's just a complete overexhaustion of myself for no reason whatsoever. And so that's what I find is that we start to discover these little things we can do, and they're just tiny little tweaks. And then it can start to have a profound impact on shifting how much more mental load you can handle, how much more capacity you have for just challenges and things in your life. And you start to get more and more resilient. And over time, you start to look and suddenly you have a completely different life because you've just made little tiny progressive changes over time.
Yes, I love that. I love the little tiny progressive changes, like whether, you're working on yourself mentally and emotionally, whether you are working just on food or, physical changes, those small little changes, those small baby steps are going to take you way further than trying to overhaul everything.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think the overhaul of everything just leads to more burnout.
Yeah. And that's what we do.
Right.
Again, overfunctioners, that's the first thing we do. We're like, I have to change everything.
Right.
Okay.
I know.
Right.
No, you don't. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think you've shared a lot of incredibly wonderful and valuable information this afternoon, D'layne. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with our audience that we didn't get a chance to go over?
I think that that's all a really good start of just
Okay.
how to start to
Yeah.
recognize these patterns and start to move out of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, self-awareness is like the first step. If you don't know you're doing something wrong, why are you going to change it?
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. If any of our audience wanted to follow you or find out more information on your breathwork practice that you do, where could
Mhm.
they find you?
So my website is www.DellayneBensonWellness.com, and I'll spell that because it's a tricky one, but it's DlayneBenson Wellness. And yeah, I have all of my virtual and in-person breathwork classes there. And then
Awesome.
I do have a newsletter that offers tips and things to help women who live in that overfunctioning state.
Awesome. So go subscribe to the newsletter. If that's all you do right now, that's still one little tiny step.
You got it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Like I said, I think this was an incredibly valuable conversation. Um, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.